Calling W2VW. W2VW. Calling W2 very weak. From WA3VJB. WA3 Victor Juliet Bravo. Calling your radio station on 7290. W2VW. Calling W2VW. W2VW. 9105A. WA3VJB. 7290. That's curious. W2VW. Calling W2VW. Calling W2 Volkswagen from WA3VJB 7290. And testing the audio max audio. 1, 2, looking for peak distortion. 1, 2, yay, yay, 1, 2. Yeah, come up a few KC there. You're on 97. 87. W2VW, W2VW. On the max audio processor, this is WA3VJB. And checking the synchronous detection mode. WA3 Victor Juliet Bravo on the max audio processor, 7290. Calling W2VW. Standing by, 7290. Hello CQ, calling CQ40, hello 40 meters AM, WA3VJB. WA3 Victor Juliet Bravo on the max audio processor, calling CQ and listening 7290. Hello CQ, calling CQ40, hello 40 meters AM, WA3VJB on 7290. WA3 Victor Juliet Bravo on the max audio processor. Conducting engineering tests and calling CQ on 7290. Listening now.
K8RAU.
K8RAU. K8RAU. Calling K8 Radio Alpha Uniforms, what I copied from WA3VJB 7290.
This is K8RAU, QRZ. I heard you calling about 5 kc lower, just moved down. This is K8RAU, near Detroit, here in Michigan.
Hello, Michigan. K8RAU from WA3 Victor Juliet Bravo. WA3VJB. Location Annapolis, the capital of Maryland. And just had fired up here and called CQ when I saw you a little bit higher, so I said, well, let's see if I can bring you down here. K8RAU, again, the name is Paul Papa Alpha Uniform Lima. WA3VJB, how copy?
Very good, Paul. Thanks for giving me a shout. WA3VJB, this is K8RAU. Great signal here in Detroit. Look, USB moving around a bit, and there's somebody tuning up on frequency. I think they're trying to find a zero beat, but it's been elusive up until now. We're running a little peanut whistle here, probably about 40 watts to a multiband dipole, about 35 feet in the air. So nothing fancy in the way of radio gear. Receiver's a HQ180, which for its age is admirable. Your audio sounds absolutely great. This one got a 3 kC wide bandpass on it, so I don't hear a lot of really great high end like I did with my old Super Pro stuff. But nevertheless, sounds very good. Back to you. Again, good signal, probably 10 over. This is K8RAU.
Yeah, what's the name there, please? The name?
Name is Mike, Mariana Kilo Easy.
Okay, Mike. Yeah, I missed it. K8RAU, Michigan. I think he said Detroit. Not sure of that. WA3VJB, right back. Yeah, the 40 watts is doing a fantastic job. I got that you're on an HQ180, which is a perfect receiver for a test I'm conducting. I'm running one of the new audio processors from a couple of AMers who've developed it in the past few years. It's called the Max Audio Processor, and it's got a thing called a pre-emphasis. It's like a treble boost, and it's meant for receivers like yours, whose passband isn't necessarily wholesome enough to get the AM experience. And I say that, partly in a marketing way, but I think you know what I mean, Mike, that, as you acknowledged, it's not really open like some SP600 or the R390A or something like that, receivers that I also have. So it'll be interesting to know whether you're getting any sense of that sibilant treble sound in there at all, because it's meant to overcome either the roll-off of a desktop speaker or limitations in the passband, such as the HQ180, so that'll be an interesting test. Running the Super Senior, currently in production from Index Labs, about a 1/4 kilowatt into an inverted V. K8RAU WA3VJB. Back to you, Mike.
WA3VJB, K8RAU. Yeah, very good. I would be really hesitant to give you a critical report. I do, in the bandpass that I have here, detect a higher amount of energy, audio energy, seemingly in the mid to lower frequencies than I do in the high end. But again, that could be just a product of the audio system I've got here. So I'd like to do more, but in the absence of a nice spectrum analyzer or any fancy stuff like that, I'm pretty hamstrung. I do have a fairly good speaker system on this radio to compensate for the poor audio performance. And you're right, the old 600s and R390s had much better audio. Thinking back to the last, first getting started, I had a BC 794, 793, which was a SP600 military version, I think. I got to remember about 65 years or so, something like that. But that had a pair of 6 million outputs, so it had like 14 watts of audio, and the darn thing sounded absolutely tremendous. It had beautiful audio on it. I don't remember what the bandwidth was, but it was very wide, and it actually was selectable, and I kept it pretty wide most of the time. Yeah, your radio sounded good. Tremendous signal in here. I don't know how long I'm going to hold up, because there is some QSB. I don't know, we've got the ionosphere must be shifting a little bit this morning, and I don't want you to disappear and lose you in the end, Paul. This radio is pretty much an unmodified multi-LMAC AF68. I'm using a have to look at AKG mic on it, and it's a fairly high quality microphone, but the rest of the audio system I'm absolutely sure doesn't match the quality of the mic. I've got an Orban processor here, but I don't have it in line. And I've also got a very nice Rain multiband graphic equalizer, but I get so much RF into both of those boxes, whenever I try to use them, I just gave up and threw them on the shelf and stick to the basics. W2HL VJB, this is K8RAU.
K8RAU WA3VJB. And I've just switched over to an Orban. I'm running the Orban HF, which is the model number is the 9105A. And it's got an emphasis in that upper mid-range that might sound better to you on your HQ180. This is one of the tests that I've been trying to do. Is find someone like yourself, which has a more typical receiver setup. I mean, sure, you can listen off the diode load of the R390 or the R390A and really get some delicious audio. But more typically, we find folks like yourself with an HQ180, or I have an HQ100A, for example, that's got the same sort of LC circuitry that the R390 has. It's a bit broader than the 180. And it sounds okay on AM, but it's got that confounded audio gain control that compensates for low-end response. As you turn it up, it rolls off the bass, and as you turn it down, it increases the bass. So I wound up going around the circuit so I could feed an external audio amp and have a thing flat. If I wanted to adjust it, I'll do the adjusting, thank you. But yeah, the SP600, if it had 6 F6s in it, I wonder if that was closer to the SP400, which had the separate power supply. I've never had one, but I've had my hands on one. Or was it an SP200? It was actually called the Super Pro on the front panel, rather than just SP600 in the later models. And I remember it had a variable bandwidth knob on the thing that was so cool because you could really tailor-make it to conditions, rather than the fixed settings of the R390A with its mechanical filters, or even the R390 with the LC-defined passband. There was just something delicious about being able to tailor-make the passband on that Super Pro that I've not been able to experience until the advent of the SDR receivers, one of which I'm listening to you on right now. I like the Kiwi SDR system of internet-based receivers. And you're coming in about 10 over 9 at one that's located in Maryland. Here at home, you're coming in about that strong as well. I'm listening on an old Marine receiver, ITT McKay from about 1980. And very good on the AKG mic. Yeah, they made some really good microphones. I wonder if that's a 414, for example. Not my favorite because it has such a beamy pattern. You can get off axis from it very, very easily. But from my time in broadcasting, it was always considered one of the better microphones. This is a Sennheiser 441 that goes into an RCA BN2A little remote mixer, octal tube type. And that's driving the Optimod to the other end. So this has a different sound characteristic to it, Mike. I'd be interested if you noticed anything from the Max audio processor. If not, that's fine, because I'm trying to replicate the sound of the Optimod with the Max audio processor that costs a fraction of what the Orban would cost. So that's part of the exercise here. K8RAU WA3VJB, back to you.
Okay, very good, Paul. Yeah, I do notice a difference in the audio, and I think the audio on your second configuration is superior to the Max audio processing you're using. At least on this particular setup. I'm always hesitant to get real critical because of the inconsistencies, and a lot of those are in the ears of the beholder, which I'm sure you know very well. This is an AKG 1200, and in a former life, these things were very ubiquitous around the place I used to work. And we replaced them all, I think, using an Electro Voice of some flavor. So I wanted to get back to the receiver you mentioned. Yeah, this had a separate power supply, so it must have been an SP400. The separate power supply was gigantic. It was all, of course, 19-inch racks, but the power supply probably weighed 50 or 60 pounds anyway, with about a tin conductor umbilical connecting the power supply to the radio. And you're right on it had a variable IF, and I think it went out to 15 kc, or maybe even a little wider than that. So you had the ability to really tune it to whatever your ear particularly required on on that day. I've often salivated at all the transmitters and radio gear that I passed in my life. I also had a 55-year career in broadcasting. Retired about 10 years ago, and now I'm reduced to a 6146 setting here with a blower on it. So it's quite a life cycle. As I said earlier, the QSP is starting to get heavy, and I'm worried about losing it. So I'll tie a knot on the bag here and send it back. W2HL, this is K8RAU.
All right, Mike. Well, gee, it's been nice crossing paths with a former radio guy. I'd like to hear more about that next time when conditions are better. Yeah, most of the gear I've got is cast-off stuff from radio stations. I find it a perfect adjunct to what we do here in this part of the hobby. And really, really enjoy it. So, yeah, very good. Yeah, the Super Pro that I had experience with was at an AM festival station that we had at one of the ham fests in this area. We had a 4-1000 screen modulated as the transmitter, homebrew. And the Super Pro is the receiver set up at the Howard County Fairgrounds in West Friendship with a open wire fed dipole strung up in the trees. And man, that thing got out. Had a great time. But I really, really enjoyed the variable passband of the receiver. And as you point out, it could really open up and get you a generous, wholesome sound. But I tell you, your AF68, you've got that modulated nicely. You might be watching a scope or something, because it's very effective audio. I mean, it's not going to be full like this. And if you remember what the model number is of your Optimod, I'd like to know what that is. I don't know if the AF68 could even take full advantage of it, but the idea of some compression could certainly help during weaker signal conditions. Not that you've got that right now, but you know, when the band turns really long, and that extra modulation index can make all the difference in the world, as I know you would know. So next time, let's pick up with some more broadcast stories there, Mike. Gee, I'd like to do some shop talk there. I had a great time in radio news. That was my calling, was radio news gathering, before I crossed over into television about 25, almost 30 years ago now. So where the money was. But I still kind of keep my hand in the radio end of things, being in touch with some of the contract engineers in the area. So if you want a retired broadcast transmitter, I can put my hands on one for you. And then you'd really be QRO from the Detroit area. And if you were a broadcast engineer in your previous life, that would probably be the last thing you'd want to do, right? I worked on too many of them. Mike, thank you for coming down in frequency and answering the CQ. And I look forward to connecting with you again when conditions are a little better. K8RAU, Michigan. WA3VJB, Annapolis. Clear with your radio, listening for a final.
W3VJB, this is K8RAU. Good, Paul. It's great talking with you. And yeah, I'd enjoy a conversation here when the band was a little more stable, at least at my end. I did many years at Scripps. I was VP of engineering for the corporation, and retired, I said, about 10 years ago. I miss the people. Lots of really smart folks, and that was probably the high point of the job, was being able to associate with people much smarter than me, and it gave you the opportunity every day to learn something new if you kept your mouth shut and listened, which I found was a great experience. Couldn't have asked for anything better. Good talking to you, Prof. Appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you again. WA3VJB, K8RAU, north of Detroit, in Michigan. We clear and listening.
Okay, Mike, very good. Yeah, I think the Scripps station here in Baltimore was WMAR TV2. I don't remember their radio properties, if any, over the years. But we can pick up with some of the television overlap when I wound up working for a group owner here. And still in news gathering. Take care, my friend. Best wishes to you for the holidays. That everybody at home stays healthy and is happy. K8RAU north of Michigan, north of Detroit. Still within the state. WA3VJB. Take care.
You too, Paul. Happy holidays to you and your family. Look forward to talking again.
Paul, can you copy? ZOA. 1ZOA. Listening.
I do have 1ZOA. They're actually very good copy, as a matter of fact. WA3VJB. Good morning.
Hey, man, it's good to hear you on here. I just wanted to tell you that you sound great. I couldn't hear the other station as well, but it's good to listen. And really nice to hear you transmitting and broadcasting. Name is Jerry. I'm located about 60 miles north of Manhattan, and you are slamming in here real good.
Well, thanks, Jerry. North of Manhattan. I forgot your QTH. That's good. Thanks for telling me. Yeah, I don't know how long you were listening, but I'm messing around with some audio processors today, getting some final comments before I write a video review of the thing. I'm on an Optimod right now. When you turn it over to me, or when I turn it back over to you, I'm going to switch over to this processor called the Max, cooked up by Clark there, N1BCG, who you probably know from 75 meters. I've been giving it a test drive for a few weeks and have been quite impressed that it can compare with this, the Optimod. But as Mike pointed out, he was north of Detroit. This seems to have a bit more of an edge that fit his passband and the characteristics of his receiver. So I don't know what you're on, but I'm recording. So if you can tell me what you're listening on, your listening conditions, that'll help me. I don't plan to do this forever and ever, but for right now, it's part of the review thing. Go ahead, Jerry. Is it 2 or 1? W1ZOA, WA3VJB.
W2ZOA back in the day, but I moved and I thought I would take on the 1 call zone, even though they eliminated call zones. You know, I still like them. I think they're useful. But I'm listening on an HQ140. You sound great, and I will give you an AB as best I can. I made a living listening. I'm much better at listening than I am speaking. So I'll just give you my my sort of unwashed opinion and see how that pans out for you. Go on with the AB.
Well, you're a little quicker than I am, Jerry. And I remember now that you changed your calls. Yeah, it comes back to me. But you still kept the ZOA in there. All right, this is the Max. I intended to put a camera on the oscilloscope to show the different waveform that it generates as well. One thing I noticed with this one is that it's got more low end. It passes more low end. And that can be good and bad. I think on a narrow receiver, it's not good, I'll put it that way. Even though it's got a pre-emphasis control, it doesn't quite have that upper mid-range density of the Optimod. I don't want to, bias your comments, but that's what I'm getting. Since you're used to listening, I don't think that'll shade your judgments otherwise. So I've given you a little bit here. It's on its greatest density setting, so maximum compression. I can roll off the bass response at the Sennheiser, which does make a little bit of difference. It sounds a little narrower this way, but for the setting, the Optimod does this at its end. And here I have to do it at the microphone end, so I'm back in the mid setting. And it starts sounding tubby when I put it on flat. There we are. Whoa. So that's really passing some low end there. I could probably hear the helicopter going by if I didn't have the gate turned on as well. Anyway, that's a quick sample of it there, Jared. What do you think?
I think what you said as you were going through the changes was accurate. Roll off, no good. You did the first roll off you did. No, you don't want to go with that. The setting you had when you came up with it is perfect, and I mean it has nuts. What are you going to compare that to?
Well, I first started out talking to you on an Optimod HF. The model of it is the 9105A, and it's intended for a shortwave AM transmitter. It actually focuses its audio envelope in the most intelligible section for typical shortwave reception. That's different than the Optimod AM. And when I switched over, I am now using the Max audio processor that was cooked up by Clark N1BCG and Rick W8KHK, who's down in Atlanta. And so this is the Max, which is a $400 box that's intended to help folks out with your Johnson Rangers or your 32V Collins or even a Super Senior, which I'm on. And I say even because it's intended to do some peak limiting that keeps the protection circuitry from tripping in the Super Senior as a way of keeping its FETs out of harm's way there in its Class D scheme of things. So I'm using this particular transmitter because it's got the least amount of influence on the sound of either of those two processors as compared with, let's say, the broadcast transmitter that I think you're more accustomed to hearing me on. So that's a little bit more of this one, and I'll kick it back to the Optimod for you to make a comparison here. It takes me a sec to swap some cables, so go ahead and make one.
Yeah, I'll do my best to give you an accurate description. This one sounds luscious. It sounds great. I wouldn't do a thing. The way you have it set up right now it is nice. It is nice. Okay, swap them out.
Okay, now, and this is the Optimod. This is meant to be a bit more intelligible, especially through QSB. It's got a circuit in it that deliberately minimizes asymmetry. As the developer of it, Bob Orban, discovered that asymmetrical waveforms during unstable propagation are a bad thing. So for a shortwave AM processor, this one is ideal to have symmetrical modulation. So I can hear that it doesn't have the low end. And it was funny, yeah, you said that the other one had that. I'm not used to running that kind of low end. At an extreme, people make fun of it and call it voodoo audio. But I think part of that descended from those who don't have an adequate system of listening. When I hear a specific station who's been described as having voodoo audio, I hear the kind of audio you just described. Good, smooth, low end without a preponderance of tubbiness that would obscure the treble response and the clarity during weaker signal conditions. So yeah, that's the deal. You said you used listening professionally. I don't know if are you a consultant or have been a consultant in years past? You've certainly got the tonal qualities to your voice that you may once have been on-air talent as well. I can hear it. We tend to know each other, right? W1ZOA, WA3VJB.
Brother, I was, you'll remember, I was a Steinway guy back in the day. And, went on many a stage. I just wrote a letter to my friend, down in South Jersey who, he sent me this blurb about this $300,000 I was going to say Orban. You put the word in my head. This if you go on eBay, somebody's selling this hot old studio processor for 300 grand. I said, yeah, I wish I had 300 grand to spend on a house, let alone a piece of rack gear. And then there's a list of, all the stuff he used it on. And I responded to him by, I have an old buddy from the sound business. I'm by trade a piano guy, so that's where the listening comes in. Not a radio man at all. But I know how to hear, you know. I like the Max better. For your voice, you have those qualities. I don't have a broadcast voice. I have just, you know, I can bark things out. That's about it. And, you know, that changes during the day, depending on conditions, varying conditions. But listen, I've listened to you over the years. You're like the broadcast voice of amateur radio, one of them. And I love that, man. I really I learn from you guys, and I hear the results of all the stuff you do. And I consider the tone generator, like what's making the sound. Well, you've got pipes, and those systems you have there are doing you justice. They both sound good. I'm not going to say this one you run when you switched back, but that Max is a bad boy. I'm not going to lie. I would stay with that, and never mind anybody listening on earbuds. Who cares? It's like, come on, just wow, it's pretty cool. So anyway, that's where the listening comes from. You had to sit there for I'm retired now, but for 40 years, slamming on felts into steel, you know, putting wood in motion, you know, 3 feet from my head. And so I like good sounds too. I settled on this HQ 140, and I've had different receivers, you know. You know, I love this thing. You know, it's like the Boy Scout Merit Badge station, the ICO 720 and 30 with the HQ 140. I call it the Merit Badge radio, because the transmitter is like a Tin Lizzie sitting here. It still works after 40 years and does what it's supposed to do. And the receiver is just, you know, and you know, I don't have to tell you, man. Yeah, there are better ones, but, and I'm going to scout around for an old, funky speaker, too. I'm looking up at my speaker. I think I want to improve it. But that's as crazy as I'm going. I modified this over 30 years ago, and I haven't touched it since, so. What do you think of all that mess? WA3VJB, W1ZOA.
W1ZOA, WA3VJB, right back. Well, I think it's pretty cool. I've had my hands on an HQ 140. I would never dispute how they sound. They've got a good pass band, and the output tube, if I remember, is a 6V6, single-ended into a speaker. It can really, really sound good. There's somebody underneath us there, too. Yeah, I've enjoyed a career in radio news gathering. That's where mine comes from. And it was a natural extension to use those kind of skills at talk radio to this part of the hobby. Thank you for the kind comments, but it really came naturally. And I feel very fortunate. I actually inherited voice characteristics of my dad, who was a bill collector out of college and later rose through the ranks of a corporate retail financing company known as Beneficial Finance. Rose to the vice presidential level. And he had this kind of voice that I've got that was very effective at bill collecting. You know, you'd get this guy on the phone. It's been 3 months since you made a payment. What are you going to do about it? Or we're going to pull your car. And it was, I think from there that some of the DNA got handed along, and I can get that kind of resonance that he's got. I've got some recordings of him here in the radio lodge, as a matter of fact. He passed away a couple of years ago, but it was interesting. I think we were talking with Joe, W3GMS, and he picked up immediately on where my voice comes from because he was hearing my dad on the other mic. So it's just one of those things that works out, you know, Jerry. I'm grateful for it because I made a good career out of it myself. But, yeah, it's not something that you can necessarily... Where's that coming from? Oh, that's the weather radio. They're doing their Wednesday tests. There it is. Yeah. I keep that thing on because here at Annapolis we've got a lot of thunderstorms in the summer, and it's nice to know when something's coming in that I can run over and ground everything. Anyway, that's on the other side of the room, Chair. Why don't you take it so I can go STFU. W1ZOA, WA3VJB, back to you.
Yeah, I heard it in the background. I heard it come in. Yeah, I'm sorry you lost your dad. I lost mine about 15 years ago. And I understand the gifts that are passed along. And for me, it was the easiest road to use my ears, you know, to get the rent. It was the easiest ticket for me, and I got that absolutely from both of my parents. Really, they were both pianists. So my mom gave it up when she started having kids. My father kept the home fires burning by going out and slinging keys. And that's great to acknowledge, you know, that you get those fantastic traits, you know, that they're inherited. And I think it's a nice thing it's a warming effect to know that, oh, dear old dad, thank you. You know, I'm still here. I managed to keep the boat floating because he passed some qualities along that I took advantage of. I took full advantage of, you know. And also some hobbies and whatnot, things that he certainly wasn't into ham radio. All I ever did was color his TV screen with lines. One of the prevailing comments that I remember from back in the day when I was putting my first transmitters on the air in the early 70s was, and with no other explanation, just like thunk, 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 I got ghosts. So he had ghosts, you know, on his 1 through 9 or whatever we had down there in the city at the time. And that was his message to me that I should not key the Ameco AC-1T because his, well, it was his kingdom, and really, you can't mess up the picture on, you know, he was the boss. I mean, I'm going to tell you the truth. But, no, all good stuff, really all good stuff. And it's nice to strive to have a good sound. Yeah. I made a few mistakes coming on here. You're supposed to listen first, I think. Try to dial things in a little before honking away. And I'm glad I got yelled at because then I walked into the bee's nest to try to figure things out, and you know, kind of picked up on it. Definitely not an electronics guy. Certainly not a broadcast guy. But I've run into lots of you cats, and I like listening. And some of my best friends are, and we're radio broadcast engineers. And these devices that you run into that are brilliant. One guy, this guy Neil Dorfsman, I ran into him years ago on some gig we were doing together, and out of his backpack, a black box that he had. It was aluminum, and it had transformers along one side. And as a ham, I was intrigued. I said, "What the hell is this? What are you doing there?" This thing looked messed up. I mean, it had 3 knobs on it. They weren't labeled. It was dirty. You know, it had some jacks. I mean, I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, this is the Holy Grail. This is sacred." I said, "What is it?" It was a compressor of some sort, compressor limiter that some junkie from the Lower East Side built for him back in the 60s. And then the guy died. But he said that this thing was his secret weapon. He used it, and he walked around like it was his Holy Grail. He lived in fear that it was going to give up and then he'd never have it again. But it was funny because he kept it going. Obviously, he kept it functioning, and it was all repairable. It was all replaceable. The tubes, Paul, the tubes were inside the box, and it was not perforated. Nothing. I said, "How does that work?" And he looked at me and left. He said, "Oh, it gets hot as hell." But that's how he got. You know, you look him up, man. The guy's like mystical. He's a mystic in his field of production and engineering, you know. But that was his trick, that box, you know. He said he'd sooner sell his firstborn than let that thing go. And when you looked at it, I mean, you got nothing. He was like straight off of a trash heap to see. But man, that was his ticket. He got it, you know, it got him through the doors, and it kept him there. And you know, when you find that right combination of purposeful parts and, you know, things that are put together by the right guy, you want to stay with it. You know what's right? Go with it. You know, you're in gear, stay in that gear. W83 VJB, W1ZOA.
W1ZOA, WA3 VJB. Nice transmission there, Jerry. Enjoyed that storytelling a lot. Well, you mentioned earlier the $300,000 piece of gear that was on the market. There are people who not only can hear what it brings to a production, but they are willing to pay that kind of money because they're not being made anymore. I mean, just even in terms of transformer winding, let alone tube production. You know, there's so many things out there from the past that have not been replicated with digital technology. And part of it can be disputed on technical specifications, but it cannot be weighed against the human experience, much of which cannot be quantified. And I think that explains why certain people have that part of their brain wired in such a way to perceive the difference and prefer it when they encounter it. And that black box that the guy had must have been fascinating. You really, you know, had to be curious to see what the devil was inside that thing. I mean, I've seen potted modules in some audio broadcast gear where the manufacturer did not want them replicated. And as a result, they'd come up with all the, you know, the values and the components that it would take to achieve whatever the function was. And it wasn't in the schematic. It would just say, you know, module number 1. It's a black magic, you know, like you pointed out. It's all this other dimension stuff that's folded into the circuit design. It's like, nah, you're not going to find out what it is. And if anybody did backward engineer it, they somehow couldn't do quite as good of a job. Even if they, you know, they melted the tar out of the module and said, here's what's in there. A friend of mine repairs and actually builds vacuum tube guitar amps. This is in your lane. And he's managed to get the sound of the Fender series guitar amps pretty close. And a lot of it had to do with component selection and including the speaker itself, the way the spider was built, the windings, the transformer laminations, all kinds of nuanced stuff that you don't normally think of. And I'm thinking of you being a Steinway technician. It's like, oh yeah, some people can hear that, and you're one of them. I've been noodling on piano and Hammond B3 and over the years. Harmonica's where I started out at in high school. And I fancy I've got a certain musical aptitude, but I never did much with it. So the other day somebody posted on one of the Labrador Retriever pages, Lab Rescue page that I do some writing for, and they've adopted a lab who howls when he hears a fire truck. And not only does he howl, you know, where they look up toward the sky, but he hits this note, and he holds the note right on pitch. So I walked over to the piano, and I said, okay, I bet it's this one. And I don't read music, and I hit it. I hit the right note. Jerry, I was very pleased with myself, but also the fact that I'm hearing this dog hit that note. So I brought out my smartphone, and I said, you know, he's got it. And I'm poking at this key. It was a white key, not a black one. I was poking at this white key on the piano, and I said, he's got it right here, right here. And then I panned up with the camera toward the sliding door out back, and there was one of our two labs wondering who's in the yard. Who's in the yard? And so we all had our own reaction, you know. W1ZOA, WA3 VJB.
Signal just come up there. Well, I wonder if he's canceling that in his head. That's hilarious, man. Didn't you tell me your grandmother was a great musician and had Steinways and all that stuff?
N2LJO.
Nah, hey George, her older sister played piano, and my grandmother actually used to get regularly yelled at by the older sister for whenever she would touch the real ivory keys of the family piano, because the older sister, who I guess was kind of a biatch, probably thought my grandma didn't have clean hands, and the ivory was going to absorb whatever awful stuff was on her fingers. But no, she was never a that much of a trained pianist, even though it's in our background. Go ahead. And that's George in there, N2LJO.
Well, pardon me, because I mix everything up, and I don't take notes the way I should, so I get things mixed up. It's a Fairchild 670 that they have listed for $300,000 from some fancy studio. I think it's in Nashville. So you can tell me what that is. I don't know. It just looks like a big, like, oh boy. You know, I can't imagine. I would have to sell my house and a whole bunch of stuff, you know, to get that. 300 grand. I'm thinking, wow. And I'm not unconvinced completely that what can be heard can't be replicated in the digital world. That's the world, thankfully, we have lived to see this, you know, and I don't mean to put down or cut down any of this wonderful tube and, you know, the reluctance and the transformers and the things that occur in this physical world. It's not about that at all. It's about what you can hear, and I've heard some great things coming out of, you know, the modern technology. So, no, I don't, it's not about drawing comparisons. It's about just hearing the sound and going with what's there. So go ahead, George, N2LJO, and the group, W1ZOA Ocean Alpha.
All right, Jerry, very good morning to you, W1ZOA and W2HL Paul. How are you today? Just trundling along here, kind of in the 10th day of a little COVID action. Feeling a lot better. Figured I'd play a little radio. My wife is off today. She's in the kitchen doing a little cooking. And I heard you gentlemen here, so I figured I'd stop in and say hello. Good signals. The band's pretty quiet. I'm on my highly modified Johnson Ranger, driving the Kenwood amp. Oh, about 200 watts of carrier, so hopefully it sounds okay. I guess Paul, over to you. W2VW in the group, N2LJO.
N2LJO, W2VW. Yeah, doing fine. I'll comment more in a minute. I'm glad you're starting to feel better. Jerry, the Fairchild 670 is a well-regarded audio leveler. It sounded like from the listing you first read that where it's been used, in other words, in what famous musician's record production this specific instrument has been used, has at least as much to do with its value as the sound that it brings to an envelope. This is when I wish Gordon was on here, W2GOR. He does that for a living. He is a recording engineer, and he will tell you what the 670 can actually do. All I know is that some of that stuff, there's another brand called Rupert Neve, and there are a lot of UK instruments that the Beatles used in the production of their records at the studios where they were at. And, you know, all this stuff has descended over the years to have a certain aura surrounding it, provenance. And, yeah, there are believers without basis that some of this gear cannot be replicated in the digital world. I tend to think there are some subtleties that may not be technically better when measured by specification. But this is what I was getting at about the human interface, where the human assignment of value is different than a technical, numerical assessment of that same gear. It's a judgment call, and that's the thing that kind of eludes these people who say digital can automatically improve upon analog technology. I don't think so. I mean, it's kind of like assigning the value to a manual shift automobile. There were people who might assert that an automatic transmission with a paddle shift is quicker and better for the performance of the automobile. And there are others who say they like a left foot experience, and that the entire driving and performance scene includes the ability to downshift and double clutch and select your gears with your foot and your throttle and all these other parameters that are involved with shifting the car yourself. And I guess the other analogy I frequently fall to is that of camera photography, where if you're forced to pick your aperture and your shutter speed, film might be incidental, but the manual nature of the camera is not better or worse than the fully automated digital camera or even the last of the fully automated film cameras. Finally, now that digital technology has kept up with the resolution of film technology, it becomes a matter of debating the merit of a randomly shaped particle of film stock or the right angle not found in nature square pixel of a camera. Well, how far can you resolve that? I don't know. But yeah, I know that there's a camp who fully agrees with you, and there's the other camp that says that digital sounds so sterile and it's lacking. And me, I could go either way depending on my mood. Now, you've got your 720-730 combination set up really nicely. I've got some good recording of it here today, as a matter of fact, because the band's got a lot of elbow room. And I went to manual gain control on one of the Kiwi SDR nodes that I'm listening to you on. So if you're not running any processing whatsoever, you've got your mic gain set correctly. You're not overmodulating, and you have a very, very nice dynamic range from loud to minimum. So that's an art in itself, not to overdrive or not to sit at about 60% positive. And that's where this old gear comes in handy for smoothing out someone's volume. And I think that's what Clark is onto when developing this Max audio processor. That's what I'm on, George. Once again, on the Max. And Jerry was helping me sort out some of the low-end response that the Optimod does not replicate. When I crank it up here like this, I can actually see it on the scope that there's some rumble getting through. And then when I put it back to a more average sort of roll-off, it's not there. Well, the Optimod doesn't even give me that option. If I roll the bass response up to where it's capable of, the Optimod says, "Nuh-uh, I ain't passing that." And Jerry happens to like the sound of the Max on my particular voice, so we were talking about voice characteristics as well. So that's what's what, George. I wonder if you took any of that that stuff that's supposed to minimize or mitigate the duration of a COVID infection. Prociclovir, what's that stuff called? Anyway, prociclovir. As long as you're on the up instead of the down, we're all happy about that, my friend. N2LJO. Nope, sorry, you just turned it to me. Here comes Jerry. W1ZOA, W83VJB. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I would have been happy to hear George respond. All right, very good. WA3VJB and N2LJO. This is W1ZOA. Well, I really appreciate that. This is very nice and kind. And as I said, I just know what hits my ear, and I'm respectful of the tone generator as long as the product I'm getting is, has integrity to it. And as far as this setup goes, just clean and clear is what I was only trying to get to. It's certainly not trying to emulate any sort of broadcast environment. I know that's not to be done, but it's really fun to use. It really is, and it's easy to tinker with. If it decides to misbehave, it's manageable. And COVID, I've had it twice, and it's a lousy, rotten thing. No, who wants to have anything wrong? I've never had any injections for it, but that's just me. I'm not saying it's good or bad to do that either. So if you want to go get needled up, go. I think there's plenty of needles out there. But I didn't do it. And I have, hopefully I have some natural immunity. But, it's no good to get a cold or anything. All that stuff is a drag. So George, I'm glad you're on the mend. And yeah, I know Gordon is a heavy cat in the recording world, and I've heard him many times with different scenarios on the air and describing equipment and stuff like that. And I've never put my hands on a neat console. I've seen them. We had one at the college I worked at for 22 years. I worked in a conservatory, and it got stolen, believe it or not. Yeah, it was in the recital hall, recording booth, and the damn thing disappeared. It was about 2002. One day they walked in there and there's a big square hole. So that was a big caper, and what a sad thing. So there you have it. But I like the car reference, and yeah, it's highly subjective. It has to do with who's listening, on what, who hears how, and I've heard enough good stuff coming out of all of it that's just great. It's it's a nice world to be in. You're going to be able to hear things and understand that these that pleasant sounds are not entirely restricted to one thing or another. It's a whole chain of events that has to take place, and you can get to it. But I mean, I like old BMW motorcycles. I've had a whole string of them, and if I say that to certain people, they'd be like, you can't shift them, and come up with all these reasons why they suck. But I'm sorry. When I look at them, they warm my heart. My favorite bike of all time was a Triumph 500 Daytona. It's a little 500 with two carbs on it. What a beautiful machine that was. Oh my God, it was so nice to ride. Just swing your leg over that thing. It was easy to get on and off. And it wasn't super fast, super powerful, but what a beautiful machine. Nimble. Didn't have great brakes even, but if you know how to ride it. So I get it. I get that. Anyway, over to you, George. See if that made any sense at all. N2LJO in the group, W1ZOA.
W2HL. Okay, W2HL acknowledged. Good afternoon. Or good morning. Not yet afternoon. Wow. This is N2LJO. You're right, Jerry. Very good. Well, I used to ride. My last bike was a Yamaha XS1100. That was like 30 years ago. I don't know. I kind of miss riding a little, but I can live without it. But it was fun. It was fun. And it's the first time I've had COVID. I did have 2 of the shots until I had a bad experience after the second one. I had the Johnson & Johnson one shot back, I guess, the end of 20 or early 21, and then a year later I had the Moderna booster, and that's when I had a little dust up with an arrhythmia that I've had for like 18 years and has been dormant. But after that booster shot, I almost called 911 a couple of times, and I took extra doses of the meds that I've been on since 2005, and thankfully that calmed down. I think Paxlovid is the medicine you're referencing, and I can't take it because of that arrhythmia. I went back to the urgent care over the weekend because I wasn't feeling well, and it was very uncomfortable trying to cough, and I couldn't cough. So she gave me I guess it's a PA, not actually a doctor, gave me prednisone, and that has made me feel wonderful. Along with a couple of other things she gave me, and I've been napping during the day. As far as the audio stuff, I'll give you a quick synopsis from one ham's eyes or position. From 18 years ago when I bought this house and I really got into HF and AM in a big way, after getting licensed a long time before, but not really having the freedom to put up whatever I wanted. And I started out, all D104s and MC60s with like TS850 and all. And I thought all the audio gear and the microphone booms and all that stuff was over the top. And then little by little, I got drawn into the dark side. And I guess first with a W2DHY box or IHY box, whatever, you know who I mean, Julius. And then I got a couple of booms, and then I got a preamp and an EQ and a compressor limiter, and it's pretty much what I'm running here right now. And this is exactly what I'm running. It's just a tube, it's all Behringer. It's a tube preamp with a 15-band EQ and a Composer Pro, which is a compressor limiter. And I can reverse the phase. I keep an eye on my bandwidth, so I don't know, maybe Paul, you can educate me. What advantages, you know, a box like the Max or the Orban or whatever, what does that do for me that I don't have? I don't know. I think this thing sounds pretty good. And I run the same audio chain into my ICO, and I get compliments all the time. And Jerry, I took a quick look at your page. You got to take the cover off that modulator, really. You got to see the tubes. Mine didn't come with a cover, but if it did, it would be on a shelf somewhere in the garage. I like to look at the tubes. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the evolution from a D104 and an MC60 to audio gear and condenser mics and microphone booms and all of that. There was a breaking station, W2HL. I'll give it over to you, and you can give it to Paul, WA3VJB. Good morning. Name here is George. Not sure if we worked before. Calls November 2 Lima Juliet Oscar. I'm in Westchester County, New York. Pick it up.
Yeah, okay, George, and good morning to everybody. Name here is Howard, and I'm located in Rockaway Beach in New York. Rockaway Beach, right near Kennedy Airport. I'm sure you guys have an idea of where that is. We got inundated during Hurricane Sandy, as many other people and areas did. I'm just checking out my system here. I did a little work on the antenna, and just wanted to say hello, see how I'm coming in. I usually don't run AM. I'm using an ICOM. It's not an AM or not an AM radio per se, but these ICOMs seem to work pretty good on AM. I don't know how the audio is on the air. You might comment on it. I'm using an ICOM 7800. I'm a ham 56 years. I used to run AM with an LMAC AF67 as a novice. I remember when I got on, most of the guys were on AM at that time. Sideband had been, I think, only 6 years used. I think ham started using it in the late 50s, or I don't know exactly. I'm sure you guys know. George and the other station, W1ZOA, you have all you got great sounding audio, and so we'll send it back to WA3VJB. This is W2HL.
Yeah, hi Howard. Nice to make your acquaintance. W2HL, Rockaway Beach near Kennedy Airport. And the group from WA3VJB. Annapolis, the capital of Maryland. Thanks for the nice comments. Yeah, the ICOM's doing fine. I'm more impressed at your signal. I don't know what the 7800 puts out for power, but you're about 20 over 9 both here at home and on one of the Kiwi SDR internet nodes that I'm listening to you on, making some recordings of this audio processor that I've got going here. Let me comment to George's, and then I'll pick up a little more with you there, Howard. Hang on just a sec. Yeah, I don't know that it would enhance much past what you're able to do with the K8RAU box there. This is really kind of a starter box for people who don't have much of anything. Not starter in the sense of it being unsophisticated, but starter being an all-in-one encompassing audio processing box that delivers the kind of audio that you want to listen to for a while, as compared with the so-called speech processors that are more suited to hit-and-run contesting or dog x-ray type of context. You don't want to listen to that. But this is the kind of processor that you can sit back and catch the stories on and not be tired of it. Ear fatigue. or ear bleed. And its price point being around $400 is something that, you know, is almost a routine level of expense these days for anybody who's already into this part of the hobby. It's not as if they, you know, they're looking to save money if they're on AM in the first place. I consider it a premium mode that takes a little bit extra to get it to be sorted out and sound good. That doesn't block people who are on stock Valiants like Frank there. If you're listening, Frank. He's quite proud, and justifiably so, of having a very stock Valiant. And his D104 that goes into it, you know, sounds narrow into it. So what? And this is one of the qualitative things that, depending on the other circumstances, this speaks to Jerry's point. He values that a lot more highly than obtaining modified hi-fi, you know, squoze out audio. That's a technical term, squoze out. And, oh, here's something. You guys will like this, although I'm hearing something on the low side of us now, too. That's too bad. I'm on a helicopter pattern. Listen to this. Now that's some low-end response. I could even see it on the VU meter of the RCA board that I'm feeding the Max audio processor with. That was cool. I don't think I've ever been right on the air with a good signal to listen to with a helicopter going by. We're not far from the pattern for Andrews Air Force Base here at Andrews, between there and Chesapeake Bay, where they do maneuvers. So when one of them goes by, I can usually see it on the scope, but not quite at this level, because the Max has more low end than does the Optimod. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'll be interested, Howard, in knowing more about what antenna arrangement you've made there for such a good signal into this part of the Chesapeake Bay region. And yeah, up here at the top of 40, we have quite a number of AM stations from about 72, 75 on up. I'm running a current production transmitter, quarter kilowatt, known as a Super Senior solid state, built by Index Labs. It's been in production for about 10 years. PLL, frequency agile, dual band transmitter, 80 and 40. And it doesn't have any transformers in it, which allows it to convey some really nice sounding audio if you take care to, you know, limit yourself and not trip its protection circuitry. It's very close in quality to a retired broadcast transmitter that I also run from the late 1940s, a Collins 300G. So anything that can come close to that. Speaking of the digital versus analog eras that have overlapped here so much in this part of the hobby, is okay by me. So let me get you a report from Jerry there. He's not far, I guess, a Manhattan somewhere. See how that near field does to you there too. And I got to start thinking about getting some lunch here. Been nice conditions though. Oh, by the way, Howard, you just missed a guy on an AF-68. When I first fired up, guy near Detroit, K8RAU, was on an AF-68, unmodified with an AKG microphone. Sounded good. Take you back in time to your novice days there. Here comes Jared, W1ZOA and the group WA3VJB.
Okay, Paul, thank you. And hello, Howard, nice to meet you. WA3VJB in the group. This is W1ZOA from New Fairfield, Connecticut, near Brewster, New York, which is about 60 miles due north of New York City, which is where I'm from. I got hatched in Staten Island, so I know all about Rockaway and the floods and everything else that took place down there. So, yeah. And, well, I scratched a few notes down. I won't hold it for too long. George I agree. The 730 looks a whole lot cooler in its tube glory with the cover off. But I'm clumsy, and I'll smack into it with something, and or leave paper in there, it'll go on fire. I like having the shelf. I put stuff on it. Plus, when it's cold in here, I can put my hand on top, and it's beautiful stuff. So there you go. But and Paul, I'll tell you what. I love to hear my money out. All of us. At least I can hear my money being burned away via internal combustion, through the services of the U.S. Air Force. And that was a great sound. And I knew it was military. I didn't know it, but I knew it. And at least for a moment today, I can know that my tax dollars have lifted something into the air. And I have the audible, living sound in the studio coming out of this receiver to prove it. Thanks to you, Paul. And by the way, George, urgent care is cool. It's a good thing to have. And sleep is key. Going back to the COVID thing. But these urgent care places that have popped up are very good for that kind of thing. You can, if you're feeling lousy and you really need some potions, then that's the world. That's a good thing about the new world. And that's it's fantastic. I don't have any wild processing here at all. I just have this little set of transmitter and modulator, and I have an old EV664 plugged into it, but I use a stomp box equalizer, and it's the bare bonesest BS EQ that you can find. Grabbed it out of one of my instrument bags, and it's a DOD thing with a battery in it, but it allowed me to shape the audio just a little bit better than it was doing. Here, this is a stake in the heart. I'll turn it off. It sounds very quite crappier. Hold on a minute. There it is. It's off now. Hello and goodbye. I won't leave it off. I'll try to keep it on. But that's it. And then from there it goes into the modulator, and just to keep it as simple as I can. I don't have all that too much going on. But Howard, your setup sounds fine to me. And you're not. There's no offense taken whatsoever in the nature of your signal there. So, anyway, I think it goes over to George. Hope everyone copied that. I'll try not to ramble too heavily. N2LJO in the group, W1ZOA.
Okie dokie. Very good, Jerry. W1ZOA in the group, N2LJO. Well, the cleaning lady did inadvertently knock one of the tubes loose one day, and it was driving me crazy. What the hell is going on with this ICO? Well, we got it. If you want to see a picture of it without the cover on, it's on my QRZ page. And actually, further down, I have a picture of Barney Fife sitting in front of his ICO 720 in the office of the Mayberry Sheriff's Department, the official radio of the Mayberry Sheriff's Department, the ICO 720. And they have a box sitting on top of it, which was also from ICO. It's the same cabinet as the VFO, but it's not the VFO. Apparently ICO made an 11-meter radio in the same cabinet as the VFO, and for some reason that's what they have sitting on top of the ICO in the picture with Barney there. And Howard, nice to make your acquaintance. I know that area so very well. I live just on the other side of the bridge in the East 30s, Avenue K, Avenue L, and had a lot of friends and family down there. Used to go to social events at the Firehouse, Breezy Point. We used to drive around Fort Tilden and hang out there when we were real young and smoke a little stuff there. And I had family that lived in Naponset, and it became like a little bit of a cruising ground for my friends and I too. And we used to go to Playland a lot when Rockaway Playland was still there, and very familiar with it. Very familiar with it. I remember when the toll was 10 cents going over the bridge, and my father would give me the dime and I would throw it in the basket, and that was when it was still the Marine Parkway Bridge. And, yeah, a lot of memories there. Flatbush Avenue with all the old hangars and Floyd Bennett Field. I remember Floyd Bennett Field was still active when I was little. And later on, I belonged to the KCRC, and we actually did field day right there at Floyd Bennett Field, which was cool. So I know your area very, very well. Very well. And, Paul, I moved past the IHY thing, but it was just like, that was a stepping stone from the, and I still use D104s, and you know what? A stock radio is fine. Everything does not have to be hi-fi. And I have radios I would never do much to. I just had one of them on the bench. I have a Ranger 2 that's very pristine. I tacked one cap, C52. I bumped it up by tacking another cap on top of the one that was there, and did a few other things to clean it up and recapped it. I did change the mic jack, but I wouldn't highly modify that. This Ranger came from Nearfest, from Cherry, K1GUP, and this Ranger was a half an inch from being a basket case. I did modify highly, but I have other radios like my Heathkit Marauder is stock, and it's fine, and I use it. And I can be very much the purist at times. If I was going to have a classic car like a 58 Impala, not a 56 or a 57 like most of you guys. I think the 58 is gorgeous. And if I was going to have one of them, I don't want any chopped discs and flames and mag chrome wheels. No, I want original hubcaps. And I want to open the hood, and I want to see that glass bottle of AC Delco windshield washer concentrate in that metal bracket on the wheel well. So I tend to shy away from doing major work to these old boat anchors. Anyway, Paul, WA3 VJB and the group. No, I didn't. I gave it to Howard last time, and Howard gave it to Paul. Almost made a mistake. W2HL in the group, N2LJO.
Yeah, okay, George. N2LJO, W2HL in the group. Very good, and I'm getting a lot of noise. I'm going to have to run. I have a contractor that came over here, and I have to attend to the situation. But I'd love to continue. So if you guys are here every day or whatever, I'll definitely like to stop in and say hello again. Yeah, I'm right near Floyd Bennett Field there, George. Right across the water, and as a matter of fact, we got migrants over there. And Rockaway is pretty good as far as it's fairly isolated from the craziness. But I'm very close to Brooklyn. As a matter of fact, I have to go over there. Yeah, the bridge, the toll now is Easy Pass, and it's about for Rockaway residents, it's $1.70. And I do remember when it was 10 cents. That was in 1962. And that's how long I've been here. The same house in 62. I'm using, Paul, I'm using here a G5RV, and I'm running, I usually don't run this amplifier on AM. I will operate. It's an Alpha 87A, and seems to be working okay. Anyway, I'm going to say 73 is a good afternoon to everybody. We're 10 minutes from there, so good morning, and nice meeting you. Thank you for letting me say hello. W2HL over to Paul, over.
All right, Howard, yeah, please come back. I remember you saying that you didn't get on this part of the hobby that often, and you're certainly welcome to come back, especially with the G5RV having been proven out. And I guess the amp, too, the Alpha behind the 7800 combination's a real winner down here to the Chesapeake Bay region. And yeah, since 1962. That's pretty cool. Well, when George mentioned Naponset, I had to reflect on the passing today of Norman Lear at 101 years old. And I'll say this story fairly quickly. Of course, Norman Lear, writer of All in the Family, there was a guy who was a plumber who were friends with the Bunkers. And he apparently had problems with Archie's toilet upstairs. This was part of the episode, I remember. Because, you know, Archie, he comes down the steps and he tells Archie, hey, Archie, your float valve's half fat. You could use a new toilet. And you see the face, you know, the facial expression, Carol O'Connor, just wonderful, saying nothing. But the look, okay? And then he says, as a matter of fact, you can use a whole new bathroom. So Archie's finally had enough. And he comes back to the guy and he says, you know, talk about falling into a royal flush. You stop carrying those greasy parts around in your good clothes. So anyway, the guy finally says, well, those greasy parts got me my beachfront home in Naponset, which is what George had just mentioned. So there we are, a quick and inadvertent tribute to Norman Lear. And I'll comment a little bit more in case these others have a couple of comments for you there, Howard. Stay in there just for a second, as long as the contractor can stand it. Here comes Jerry, W1ZOA, and N2LJO with W2HL having side, WA3VJB. W2 very weak.
All right, and W2 very weak. You must have taken a cue from me there, brother. VW, those are good letters. You're right on. All right, 7-3, Howard. Nice to meet you, and good to hear you on the band on shortwave. You know. And Norman Lear, gee, that's a shame, but wow, you know, wow, 101, 102, you said. Wow, and Archie, yeah. That's good stuff. So let's see. I'm sorry. You know what? My everything blew out of my head when I see VW. So go ahead. W2VW and the group W1ZOA Ocean Alpha. Name is Jerry.
I've been kind of sort of listening here, but I was eating lunch, so I wasn't really paying a lot of attention. But I told Paul I'd meet him on the air. I have to make it on whatever threats I do. Yeah, I heard the helicopter there. It was beautiful. Paul, you guys having enough cat here, so I won't wreck it. I might have to go hang with Ernie, though, because you guys are all going to flame out. You've been on for a while. Hi, George. Coming in great. And this is the first time that this Valiant has been used on 40 liters, probably, I don't know, over 30 years. So if I disappear suddenly, you know why. And it's named Delta Alpha Victor Echo, located in London Grove, Pennsylvania. And maybe, Paul, you can tell me who it goes to. I thought Howard was still in here. I don't know. You can tell me that. I don't know. I hate breaking into a QSL and doing that, too. But, anyway, W2 very weak, Paul. Yeah, I lost the thread of it here while we were collecting our see you laters to Howard. I had turned it to Jerry, who turned it to you, and I guess I'm going to kick it back to George in case he had anything else for Howard as well. And then Howard, kick it back to me. I think around noontime I'm going to head in for lunch. I'll be back. I don't know where Ernie is. Is he below us or above us? I'm seeing two different AM QSOs on 85 and 90. Dave, the characteristics of this particular Valiant, lots of low-end response. I don't know if you've got any audio gear to roll that off and boost the mid-range and highs, but it's very like that. So it's transmitting it, but you just need it in greater proportion, that's all. Here comes George. Thank you for the Naponset reference. Yeah, Lear was 101 years old. Completely keyed in on a memory I had of an old All in the Family episode from, what, 50 years ago? Daggone. Yeah, I guess it was. 73, 71. Great googly moogly. And I'll say one more thing about the covers being off tube gear. Yeah, I've got a Macintosh audio amplifier, and they are seldom photographed with their cover in place because people want to see those 6L6s glowing across the chrome chassis. I know exactly what you mean by that. N2LJO and the group WA3VJB.
All right, W2HL in the group, N2LJO. Good morning still, 11:54. Good morning, Dave. Good to hear you. You're coming in here good. It's just weird on my scope here. I don't know if it's an anomaly on my side. It looks like you have a lot more energy in your upper sideband than your lower. I don't know if anybody else saw that, or maybe I'm hallucinating. I don't know. But anyway, you sound fine. And yep, I've got a pair of Dynacos out in the garage, Paul, and I don't have the covers on them. And the Macintosh gear is nice. I had a girlfriend a long time ago that whose father was heavy into that stuff, and I never really got to hear it too much. He used to play a lot of classical stuff. But I've got my Dynaco Mark 6s, and they rock the garage pretty good.